How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to my kitchen, and last week I let my community do the cooking. We held our first ever Discord cook-off where, just like those Netflix shows, I give my contestants an ingredient to cook with, and they come back with their best recipe using that ingredient. In this case, the ingredient I gave them was this Metagross with emergency entry, which says that if you top deck this card you can play it right away and draw 3 cards. It also has the attack Meteor Mash, which does 100 damage, and another 100 if it used Meteor Mash last turn. So if it survives a turn, it can start hitting pretty hard for a single prizer. So everyone made a deck with this card, and there's no other rules other than you have to have at least 3 of the featured card, and it has to be standard format legal. Once they made that, we held a tournament to see who among them was the best chef, and here's how it went. But before we get into that, I figured this is a great opportunity to get you all to jump into our Discord and join for the next one. I plan to do one of these tournaments every month, and I'm taking suggestions for the next featured card to be announced February 1st. So if you haven't already, come join our growing community. Aside from the tournaments, we also have fun channels where you can post your decks and get some feedback, and practice against live players because Lord knows those AI bots ain't it. Link is in the description below, and we'd love to have you in our kitchen. So this is the bracket we were working with. Our first matchup was between Olaf the Bro and Shifu Stu, both of whom are very active members in the community, always coming at me with suggestions and ways to improve my lists. So I had high hopes for both of them. In the left corner, Olaf had a plan to play from behind, using a Dodrio draw engine as well as a copy of Luxray and 2 reversal energies. He was very much banking on being able to play cards directly onto the bench with a good bit of firepower. He also had the single prize Dialga with the attack time manipulation, which lets you put 2 cards on top of your deck, which would allow you to get Metagross into play much more easily. His opponent, Shifu Stu, also had a very similar strategy, but with a different way of getting there. His plan was to use Dusknoir to go down on prizes and use reversal energy to get his Metagross powered up. With the sheer amount of prize map manipulation, his plan was to help get his opponent down to 1 prize, and then use Winbro to finish off the game. And he had a number of ways of getting those Dusknoirs going, with the Grand Tree and the Arvins and the rare candies and even a Hisuian Sneasler V that he could use as a Forest Seal target. So here we are watching Stu's perspective, where he got set up with a couple of Duskulls and a Pidgey, while Olaf managed to get a Dialga ready to go and a couple of Doduos out with the Fan Rotom. Unfortunately for Olaf, Stu managed to get a Grand Tree out and got a Pidgeot, Rare Candy, and Dusknoir all in one turn, and took out the Dialga and all the effort that Olaf took to set up the previous turn, which really set him back. Olaf managed to retaliate by getting a Metagross off the top deck the following turn, but settled for knocking out a Duskull with the Fan Rotom. But what this did was put Stu in a position where he was down on prizes, to which he was able to use Academy at Night to get Metagross on the top of the deck and pass without attacking. To which Olaf came back and used Crispin to get Metagross powered up and swung with a Meteor Mash on the Pidgeot. Now Stu at this point was still down on prizes, giving him a really interesting opportunity to hit with the Curse Blast for 50, slap on a Defiance Band, and hit for another 130 with Metagross for the knockout with the reversal energy, and still stay down on prizes, which really limited Olaf's retaliation options. He did come back with another Metagross and then Iono to ensure Stu's Metagross top deck wouldn't come in. However, Stu was able to set up with a Slowpoke and get another Duskull started, and he really didn't need to do a whole lot from there, as he was very much in control of the prize mapping. Now Dodrio makes for a pretty good attacker too, but it needs time to ramp up damage on itself, which Olaf was starting to run out of. He managed to boss the Lumineon into the active turret to buy himself some time, but ended up only going for 100 damage on that Lumineon. The Cascade was starting to become a little bit overwhelming for Olaf by this point. With Pidgeot having a free search, Stu goes for a Thornton and changes Lumineon into a Duskull, taking a self-KO in one of the craziest 1000 IQ plays I've ever seen, and goes down a prize in order for his Metagross to swing with reversal energy. He says it was totally by accident, but I personally think that he should own it and say that was part of his plan because that was quite the play. And he managed to get a reversal energy on the Slowpoke as well, so the conditions for victory were now there. Olaf got a Blood Moon Ursaluna but ended up passing without an attack, after which Stu had his win conditions ready. He KO'd his own Dusclops to get Olaf to 1 prize, retreated the Metagross, and came in with the Winbro for the Winbro. And that was game 1 in the books. Shifu Stu moving on, and Olaf taking a very unfortunate L to one of the only decks in the tournament that was kind of built to beat a strategy. Keep in mind, nobody knew each other's deck lists when they entered, and ChatGPT made the bracket, so I had no part in that either. The second matchup was between Razbersky and Bidoof, and unfortunately neither of them were set up to stream. So this game happened in the background while Shifu and Olaf's match were happening. Razbersky ended up winning it, but I do want to at the very least show off Bidoof's list because it's really interesting, and low-key I kinda wanted to see this do well, and I'm really sad I didn't get to see it at all. So Bidoof had 1 playable starting card, and that was the Rotom. Everything else was intended to be played in some other way, such as the Netherworld Gate Gengar, who can be played from the discard. Luxray is a playable card, but you can also choose not to start it, I'm pretty sure. And the other Luxray can be played only if you're down on prizes. So Bidoof heard the assignment and completely leaned into it, which I like. It looks like the goal here was to mulligan again and again and again, and then use Zero Sick or Hand Trimmer to drop the opponent's hand down early on. Feels kinda mean, but I like the concept. Deduction Kit is also cool in here because you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck and rearrange them, which is great for a card that likes to be top decked. So this was another very creative use of the concept. This is what I was looking for when I asked people to cook with Metagross. This is what I'd like to see. But he did lose, and he gave me a mention that he would have liked to see the featured card be used more in the tournament, which I kind of agree with, and I will take responsibility for that. It is on me to make sure that I use a card that will kind of force people to use its core functions. For this one, I did focus more on the ability than the attack, and a lot of people interpreted that as you have to use this attack for most of your damage, while others really only used it for its ability and didn't attack with it at all. I definitely understand this concern, and I will adjust that for the next tournament. So Razbersky moves on as well, and I will discuss her deck in the next matchup against Stu, but for now let's move on down to this matchup, as we had to make a last-minute substitution for this one because of a food poisoning incident. So in this matchup, we have Swax on the left, coming in with another very interesting use of the card, teching it into Tinkaton EX. Now when I first saw this, I was very hesitant to approve it, because I didn't just want to have someone playing a deck that already exists and throwing in a couple of Metagross to fill the quota. But I did approve it, and it's because he was able to use it as a draw engine every turn, with Academy at Night to power up Tinkaton. So while it can attack with the Neo Upper Energy, that's not its intended purpose here. And I'm glad I approved it in the end, because this was a genius way to play the card that I never would have considered. This is the kind of thing that I love to see with cooking with unfamiliar ingredients. If I could give a reward for the most clever use of the ingredient, it would go to Swax. Now his opponent MFX was running another interesting build, with a full line of Beldum and Metang to help power up the rest of his squad. He ran 4 Incandescent Body Heatrans, which has an ability that lets you burn the opponent when they hit you. He also ran a 2/2 line of Basculegion to allow energy back into the deck, after everything inevitably gets knocked out. And he came to me with a question before we all started, asking, are there any banned cards in this tournament, like for example a Cornerstone Ogerpon that could shut down a lot of the matchups? And my response was, that's their fault for not running a Canceling Cologne. Part of deck building is being prepared for the things that could beat you. And so that's why we see the Mimikyu and the Cornerstone Ogerpon as a way to wall out some of the matchups that really relied on Metagross as the main attacker. However, Swax wasn't one of them. And so in the matchup we were watching from MFX's perspective, and we can see that Swax sets up really well with 4 Dunsparces off the bat. MFX responds by getting 1 energy on the Heatran and dropping a Metagross onto the top deck with a Cypher Maniac. Remember that Metagross works really well as a draw engine if you can consistently get it on the top of your deck. So now we're seeing Swax start to get the Dunsparces rolling and gets his Tinkaton ready to roll and takes an early KO on the Heatran, triggering the Incandescent Body. But he does flip heads and heals from it pretty quickly. So MFX responds by trapping a Fan Rotom in the active and using Basculin's Gather the Crew to get another Heatran and Mimikyu onto the bench. Not sure if you realize, but Basculin can do that for free. You actually don't need to attach the energy to make that happen. The trap worked though, as he managed to get the Fan Rotom in the active for 1 turn. All Swax was able to do was get the Lucky Helmet on and pass, to which Metagross was able to then take out the active and grant 2 cards to Swax. Swax responded by promoting the Tinkaton and searching out a Colress, and then playing down the Academy at Night, and that's where interesting things really started to happen. We can assume that he probably put a Metagross into the top deck here, and then chose to swing with Big Hammer. MFX responds by promoting Mimikyu to buy some more time, and uses Academy at Night to throw Basculegion into the top deck, which I thought was an interesting choice, but probably was preparing for an Iono. And we were right about Swax putting Metagross into the top deck because he benched it and drew 3, which from this point it seems like he was able to pretty consistently do. He bossed the Beldum and took it out, and then by now it was looking a little bit desperate. MFX just bosses the Lumineon to buy some more time and passes, really banking on Mimikyu to hold the line. Now Swax was mostly relying on Tinkaton as the main attacker, but did add in a Neo Upper Energy so that Metagross could attack if it needed to. For now, he just bosses another Beldum and takes that out instead. And it is desperate now. We have a late game Iono, which is Tinkaton's worst nightmare, and then another pass hoping for more time. Swax responds with a Turo to pull Tinkaton and brings up Metagross to finish off the Mimikyu, after which it's Basculegion time, which I personally always love to see. But with only 5 energy in the discard, he only manages to hit for 100, and remember that Meteor Mash ramps up damage if it survives a turn, so it hits for 200 to end the game, and that is MFX eliminated and Swax moving on to the semifinals. So now we'll come back to this matchup between Hefchusky, who is not me by the way, and Multinanairo. Hefchusky is my nephew, who is currently working a job in Mississippi, and he made a promise to himself to not eat any of the fast food there because he didn't trust it. But he folded on that and grabbed McDonald's and got super sick off of it. But I did help him make this list, and the featured card was chosen because he used to use this card in his Hisuian Gudra deck back when we first started playing. So this tournament was really made so that he could send off one of his favorite cards into the sunset before rotation, so I'm really sad that he didn't get to participate here because this was his list. He also used a full line of Beldum and Metang, but also threw in Aggron VMAX, Excadrill, and Squavit, who all have an attack that lets you discard the top card of your opponent's deck, which would help prevent people from being able to use Academy at Night or Cypher Maniac to play Metagross. He also used a heavy line of Hand Disruption to achieve the same thing, with 3 Iono and 2 Roxanne. The whole thing was kinda made to counter the playstyle we were expecting to see. But unfortunately, McDonald's betrays working class again, and he couldn't play. Until a brave soul stepped up to take his place. And during that match between Swax and MFX, Cheese put together a very quick list using Arcaludon EX as the main energy accelerator. Also using a full line of Metagross, we do see 2 Cypher Maniacs and 1 Academy at Night to get Metagross to do his thing. And otherwise, it looks to be a pretty solid list that we would expect to see for a challenge like this. His opponent, Multinanairo, came in with an Arcaludon list as well, using Baby Arcaludon instead. Now there was another thing that I made a little unclear about the rules that I think played a factor here. I said that the featured card would never be an EX, meaning that I would never give you an EX card to cook around, because they cost a lot of crafting materials and I want this to be as accessible as possible for people who want to play. However, some people interpreted that as no EX Pokemon allowed, so that played a factor in a couple deck lists that I saw, including this one. So in this matchup between Cheese and Molten we are seeing very similar setups, with Radiant Greninja, Duraludon, and Beldum going up pretty early for both players. We see Cheese get down a ton of setup and then research for some more, and getting the Gemming Tower set up as well. Unfortunate whiff on the Metal Maker, but in the end decides to throw away all that energy anyway, and passes with Greninja in the front. Molten responds with an immediate Iono, and gets a Duraludon ready to go with 3 Metal Energy, and getting a crazy good Metal Maker for 3 energy and getting a second Duraludon ready to go. We see a Raging Hammer for 80, and then turn passes right back to Cheese, who is able to Ultra Ball for the Archaludon EX, getting all that energy right back into play. Good thing too, because those Metal Makers are not doing him any favors. Unfortunately, it's not enough to get an attack this turn, so he just retreats to Greninja and passes with a Duraludon in front. Molten responds by evolving the Duraludon in the back, and free retreating the active and knocking out the sacrifice that Cheese put up front. We then see Cheese respond right away with Cypher Maniac, which could help him get another Archaludon set up because of Radiant Greninja, with Assemble Alloy being his best way of pulling energy since that Metang is pulling exactly none of its weight, and he is able to get an attack off with the active Archaludon. Molten responds by just hitting with a beam for 60 off the Metang, and then Cheese pulls the top deck of the Sentry with the unintended, totally intentional emergency entry Metagross, which he's able to power up quickly with the other Metang, and he swings on the opposing Metang, knocking it out. This match did go pretty long, both players went down below 10 cards remaining, but it ended up being a win for Archaludon EX because it just puts out more firepower. In the future, I will be more clear about EX Pokemon being allowed in these tournaments, but I won't be using them as the featured cards so that they are more affordable to the average player. I am glad that we ended up seeing the featured Pokemon towards the end, even though they didn't see much action at all in this matchup. So now our semifinal is set up. We have Shifu versus Raz on the left, and Cheese versus Swax on the right. Now, because of some time constraints, we ended up doing Cheese versus Swax first, so I'll show that matchup now. So what we're seeing here is Tinkaton EX versus Archaludon EX. We are again looking at Cheese's perspective, and we see a pretty good setup from both of them. On his second turn, Swax manages to get a Tinkaton going, and pulls off a bunch of Dunsparce evolves, but doesn't play them, as 5 is plenty enough to take out the Duraludon. Remember that Tinkaton is a pretty risky play considering all these matchups feature metal Pokemon, which Tinkaton is very weak to. Cheese responds with a Fez and gets his board set up, and pulls the Archaludon EX off of the Greninja, and gets the first huge KO on Tinkaton with the Archaludon for 440 damage, while also setting up the Archaludon in the back. Swax responds with a Metagross top deck, and attaches the Nero upper energy, and takes a KO on the benched Beldum with the boss's orders. He also low-key throws something on top of his deck. Another Metagross maybe? But Cheese comes back in with Archaludon and plays a Cypher Maniac to get him a Tang and a Prime Catcher, courtesy of Greninja, and he starts accelerating more energy on. He hits with Metal Defender and takes out the Metagross for one more prize. And now you can really see Swax's strategy. He promotes the Dunsparce and gets 3 more cards from the Metagross top deck again, allowing him to start his turn with 12 cards and eventually going up to 14 and taking a huge KO on Archaludon for 2 more prizes. Cheese responds by promoting his last Archaludon and evolving into the Metagross, who is also ready to start swinging with 2 energies attached. Cheese plays a Cypher Maniac in order to get Metagross into the top deck and decides to play Prime Catcher to get rid of the Dunsparce to limit Swax's options for draw support next turn. The prize draw is an Iono, so all he needs now is to survive the next turn, but no, Swax pulls a boss and ends the game right then and there, moving Swax into the finals despite his weakness to metal. Again, I think this is a very impressive display on how to use this card to boost up other decks. Even though it wasn't heavily used as an attacker by either player, you can see where Swax made great use of it. I think he definitely deserves his spot in the final. So now we go to our other semifinal matchup between Razbersky and Shifu. Now it's been a little while since we've been on this side of the table, so as you'll remember, Shifu was the one with the heavy Dusknoir line and the plan to play from behind. But we never got to see Raz's list because there was no one to stream it. Thankfully, we did have Raz to stream from mobile, so we were able to get some insight as to what was going on this time. So finally, this is Raz's list. It's also an Archaludon EX build without the full Metang line. Instead, she went for full tankiness, using Oricorio and Radiant Serena and including a Rigid Band and Pod Helmet to make everything even tankier. She used a Pidgeot EX for a consistency engine as well. Raz started with a Pidgey, while Stu opened up with a couple Duskulls and a Pidgey of his own. He benches a third Duskull and a Slowpoke and ends his turn, giving Raz a chance to get a couple things set up. And this is another example of using Metagross as a draw engine, using the Ultra Ball to get it out, and then Academy at Night to put it on top of the deck, and just passing. However, Stu comes in with the Dusclops and takes out the Pidgey to start his turn, granting both players a prize, but also preventing Raz from getting the consistency going. So getting the Metagross in there was a great call. With that top deck and a draw 3, it effectively works like a Fez, bailing her out of what would have been a really bad situation. She plays Arven to get out a Vestal and a Rigid Band, and starts slapping on the energy before evolving. Unfortunately, it's not enough to get the attack off, so it's a pass from here, which actually could be a good thing, because going down on prizes is what Stu wants. He also top decks a Metagross and benches it, and uses Arven to get out another Ultra Ball and a Forest Seal Stone. Ultra Ball gets another Metagross, which he puts back on the top deck and just passes his turn. Raz attaches the third energy and is able to get off a Metal Defender to take out the Slowpoke, which helps Stu get online. He promotes the Metagross, who is now ready to roll with the Defiance Band and Reversal Energy attached. With the Metagross top deck, he is able to pull a Buddy Buddy to get even more Duskulls ready to go, but he only hits for 100 because of Rigid Band, which the Serena and Oricorio are able to start healing in the background. Raz comes back with a Metal Defender and KOs the Metagross, and now things are starting to look a little bit dicey for Stu. Metagross needs 2 turns in the active to start hitting big damage, and Dusknoir makes you lose a prize in order to do big damage, which he really can't afford to do anymore. He benches his Hisuian Sneasler V and passes without attacking, allowing more heals to happen, and a boss with the Sneasler for 2 more prizes. Now at this point, Dusknoir is no longer an option, because losing a prize now means you just lose, period. But he goes for a Curse Blast anyway as a scoop and accepts the L, moving Raz into the finals to face off against Swax's Tinkaton. And now for our finals matchup, Raz has a bit of an unfortunate start with Oricorio in the active. Swax goes first and manages to get 2 Dunsparces down and attaches the Lucky Helmet to the active Tinkatink. Raz plays down Arven in response and settles for taking a Nest Ball and a Rigid Band and passes after placing an Energy and Pidgey down. Swax then comes in, gets a Dunsparce off, and plays down another Tinkatink and a Lumineon to get rolling. He then uses a Buddy Buddy to get more Dunsparces and passes without attacking. These streets are rough, but we keep rolling. Then Raz top decks a Metagross unintentionally but fully intentional, and gets to draw 3, granting another energy and a Pot Helmet, which she attaches right onto the new Metagross. She goes in with Iono, which is kind of a risky play right now considering Iono in the late game is the best thing against Tinkaton EX. But it does grant an Ultra Ball, which she uses to pull out the Arcaludon, but doesn't play it yet as there may not be a way to attack this turn. She passes without attacking. Swax responds with an Arizu and grabs a bunch of Dunsparces, which he plays right away and gets 14 cards in hand, but still doesn't have the Tinkaton, and passes without attacking. Raz starts her turn with Arven, grabbing a Pokegear and a Pot Helmet to thin, and once again passes without attacking. Swax uses Buddy Buddy to get more Dunsparces in play, and also passes. Yikes, these streets are tough, and it looks to be Brick City for both, but Raz ends up going for the Evolve on the Arcaludon, takes the Fez with a Nest Ball, plays a switch, and breaks the tie by going in for the swing. Thanks to the Lucky Helmet, Swax gets 2 more cards as compensation for the prize card. And who swings at a baby for 440, you monster? Swax decides it's enough playing around and gets Tinkaton going. He gets his hand up to 13 cards and swings for 340, taking out the Arcaludon in one shot. Raz responds with a Flippity of the Scrippity on the Pheasantipity and gets the Arcaludon with it. All she needs now is 1 energy to attack, which she plays Secret Box to grab all the pieces she needs for Pidgeot EX, who then goes in to pull an Iono to get that last energy, and also disrupts Swax's way of pulling cards. Keep in mind to KO Duraludon with Rigid Band, it needs about 12 cards. Raz then swings with the Arcaludon for 440 and knocks the Tinkaton in one shot without a problem. But now Swax needs a lot to go right in order to get a KO. He manages to get a new Tinkaton going with a double turbo and everything, but only manages to get 4 cards in hand, and only gets to swing for 70 damage. Raz then uses Pidgeot EX to start powering up the Metagross with an energy, but then chooses to boss up the Dunsparce to prevent Swax from drawing next turn. With the heals from Oricorio, Swax needs 9 cards in order to take out the Arcaludon, but he can't get it. He gets 7, hits for 210, and loses in the final to Raz, who will then take our grand prize of a $20 gift card to the PTCGL store. Not sponsored, but would like to be. Which is awesome because she had mentioned wanting to participate in the tournament but didn't have the resources. A couple of us did manage to pull together some extra codes that was able to get her enough to participate, which is the kind of community sharing that I'd love to see. This was an awesome first tournament and I can't wait to host another one next month. I agree with the people who said that they would like to see the featured card used more, so maybe I'll lean more into a card that requires a certain playstyle. If you have any suggestions for cards that can do that, I'm all ears. But that's all I got for you today. Congratulations to Razbersky for your first tournament win, and I would like to thank everyone who participated for a really fun time, and for spending your hard-earned credits for a silly tournament I threw together. Once again, if you want to participate, all you gotta do is join our Discord and keep an eye out on February 1st, where I'll be announcing the featured card and the next tournament date. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you later this week with a return to our usual format.